There are nights when the entire city has fallen asleep, yet you are still wide awake in the dark. No noise, no new messages, no one calling your name, only the ticking of the clock and the heaviness inside your own heart. Does that feel familiar? During the day, you are so busy you barely have time to breathe. Work, responsibilities, family, conversations, polite smiles, all of it makes you believe you are fine. But when night falls, when every role is set down, you begin to notice a very quiet truth. You're tired, not tired in the body, but tired in the soul. Some people lie on a soft bed and still toss and turn. Some succeed in the world, yet feel empty when the lights go out. Some laugh all day, yet at night only want to sigh. Night is when we face ourselves. And sometimes, that is exactly what frightens us. Or have you ever stared at the ceiling for hours, letting thoughts circle endlessly? Things that have passed, words you should have said, worries about tomorrow, wounds not yet healed, questions with no answers. The more you think, the more awake you become. The more you worry, the heavier you feel. The more you try to sleep, the less sleep comes. We think insomnia comes from physical exhaustion, but the truth is the mind has not let go. All day long we hold too many things: responsibilities, pressure, expectations, roles, hurt, pride, fear. We hold them so tightly, there is no room left for peace. And when night arrives, everything we tried to forget in the daylight returns in the dark. Not to harm us, but to be seen. A man once told me, "During the day I am strong, but at night I feel unbearably weak." I asked him, "What do you fear most when night comes?" He was silent for a long time, then answered, "I'm afraid of being alone with myself." Perhaps that is not only his story. How many of us stay busy all day, just to avoid facing the sadness within? We turn on the TV, we scroll our phones, we watch videos until exhaustion. We play music to drown out the silence. Yet, when every sound stops, the mind is still restless, because peace does not come from making more noise outside. Peace comes when the inside grows quiet. The Buddha taught that the body may live in a noisy world, but the mind needs a place to return to. If the mind is agitated, even the quietest place cannot bring peace. But when the mind is still, one can remain at ease in the busiest street. It sounds simple, but in truth, it is a journey of letting go. Try to remember a night in your life when you slept deeply. No worry, no racing thoughts, no fear, simply drifting into sleep like a child. What was different about that night? Perhaps you forgave someone. Perhaps you accepted something. Perhaps you laid down a burden. Perhaps you stopped trying to control everything. When the mind becomes light, sleep arrives. We often search for peace outside ourselves. A quiet place, a vacation, soft music, a warm cup of tea. These things may soothe us, but only temporarily, because true peace does not lie in a softer pillow or a quieter room. It lies within the mind. There is a strange paradox. The world has never been more comfortable, yet people sleep worse than ever. We have smart sleep lights, meditation apps, sleep music, rain machines, and still lie awake. Technology can soften the sounds outside, but only letting go softens the noise within. Tonight, when you lie down, thoughts may still return. That is okay. You do not need to fight them. You do not need to push them away. Simply notice, my mind is tired. Then take a slow breath in and breathe out, gently. No need to force sleep. Just allow yourself to rest, because sometimes what we need is not sleep immediately, but a place where the mind can finally let go. And when the mind lets go, ancient peace finds its way in. To sleep well, the mind must first be at peace. You may be lying in a perfectly quiet room, yet your mind is as noisy as a rush hour train station. No traffic sounds, no voices, only you and hundreds of thoughts lining up without end. And in that moment, we notice something very strange. Outer silence does not guarantee inner peace. Have you ever gone on vacation to a beautiful, tranquil place, yet still felt restless? And at other times, you sit in a crowded cafe, voices all around you, yet your heart feels light. What creates that difference? Not the surroundings, but the state of the mind. When the mind is restless, we carry agitation wherever we go. When the mind is calm, we carry peace into every situation. The Buddha taught that if the mind has not settled, even sitting in a remote mountain temple, the heart remains uneasy. But when the mind is still, one can remain at ease in the busiest marketplace. It sounds simple, but it is an art of living. We are used to thinking that sleeping well requires a better bed, a softer pillow, a quieter environment. But in truth, what we need first is a mind that is allowed to rest. Because the body can lie down, but if the mind keeps running, we remain exhausted. Try to remember the nights when sleep was hardest. They were not usually the days you moved too much, but the days you thought too much. You lie down, yet the mind runs back to the past. An unfinished conversation, a mistake that haunts you, a sadness left unspoken. Then the mind runs toward the future. What will tomorrow bring? What might happen? Am I good enough? Will everything be okay? When the mind travels that far, how can sleep arrive? We do not lose sleep because we lack time to rest. We lose sleep because we lack the ability to let go. Let go of the past, or let go of the future. Let go of what is not in this present moment. The present is the only place where life is actually happening, yet our minds are rarely there. Once, a woman shared that every night before bed, she replayed her mistakes. She blamed herself, believing she should have done better. She carried that guilt to bed each night and suffered insomnia for years. Then one day, a friend told her, "You don't need to carry today into your sleep. Leave it behind." She began trying something very small. Before sleeping, she closed her eyes and whispered, "Today was enough." That one simple sentence, and for the first time in years, she slept deeply. Not because life suddenly became perfect, but because she let go. The mind is like a lake. When wind rises, the surface ripples and we cannot see the bottom. But when the water becomes still, everything is clear. Life does not always stop the wind, but we can learn to let the inner lake settle, or when something miraculous happens. When the mind becomes still, we begin to see ourselves. No layers of worry covering the surface. No imagined stories distorting reality. Only presence. Have you noticed that most of our worries do not belong to the present moment? They belong to what has passed or what has not yet happened. Yet our body is here. The breath is moving in and out. Life is unfolding in this very moment. Returning to the present is not a lofty philosophy. It is a simple act. Return to the breath. Right now, if you are listening to these words, try breathing in slowly. Feel the air entering your body. Then breathe out gently. No need to control it. Just notice. Breathing in. Aware that you are breathing in. Breathing out. Aware that you are breathing out. That is all. The breath is an anchor that keeps the mind in the present. When you follow the breath, the mind begins to slow. When the mind slows, thoughts become less crowded. When thoughts settle, the body understands it is time to rest. Many people try to force themselves to sleep. But sleep does not come through force. It comes when we allow ourselves to relax. Instead of stopping thoughts, let them drift like clouds. Instead of controlling everything, allow the night to be the night. You do not need to solve every problem before sleeping. You do not need to understand life before closing your eyes. You only need to rest. Tonight you might try something simple. As you lie down, place a hand on your chest and feel the breath. If a thought appears, simply notice it and return to the breath. No arguing, no resisting, no chasing, just return. And in that returning, the mind gradually settles like a lake after the wind. When the mind is still, you not only sleep better, you begin to understand yourself more clearly. And that may be the first step toward peace. Because when we learn to return to the present, we also learn to live more gently in the days ahead. Right now, if you are listening to these words, pause for a moment, breathe in slowly, and breathe out softly. There is nothing you need to do. Simply notice that you are here, and in this moment, you are allowed to rest. The law of cause and effect shapes our lives and our sleep. There is a truth many people only recognize when night falls. It is not the bed that keeps us tossing and turning, but our own conscience. Have you ever lain down while your mind refuses to rest? No noise surrounds you, yet inside there are questions, unrest, unfinished matters, and the more you try to sleep, the more uneasy you become. We often think sleep is affected by coffee, work, or pressure. But deeper than that, sleep is influenced by the way we live each day. Because in this life, nothing happens randomly. Everything arises from causes and conditions. A word we release, an action we take, a thought we nurture. All of these plant invisible seeds in the mind. And at some point, they bear fruit. Sometimes in the very hours we lie down to rest. Have you noticed that after a day of doing something good, your heart feels lighter? A small act of kindness, helping someone, speaking sincerely, or simply not hurting another person can make you feel more at ease when night comes. Not because the world has changed, but because your heart has grown lighter. On the other hand, when we do something against our conscience, even something small, a feeling of unease can linger for a long time. We may try to forget it, but the mind does not forget. We may justify it, but deep within, a small wave has not yet settled. And night is when those waves become most visible. Buddhism calls this karma, not as punishment, but as a natural law. Just as planting a seed produces a corresponding plant, no one is punishing us. What we sow shapes the experience we receive. A friend once told me that he suffered prolonged insomnia during a difficult period in his life. He tried changing mattresses, switching rooms, using sleeping pills, listening to meditation music. But nothing worked. Later he realized that during that time, he frequently lied at work to avoid trouble. Those words helped him escape awkward situations during the day, but at night, they left him feeling heavy. When he decided to live more honestly, even when inconvenient, his sleep gradually returned. Not a miracle. Only the mind no longer fighting against itself. The law of cause and effect is not distant or abstract. It unfolds each day in how we think, speak, and act. A thought of anger repeated many times becomes a habit of unrest. A kind thought nurtured over time becomes deep peace. What is important to notice is that karma does not begin with actions or words. It begins with thoughts. If our hearts are filled with judgment, jealousy, or resentment. True rest is difficult, but when we cultivate compassion, kindness, and goodwill, the mind gradually becomes lighter, and that lightness is the softest pillow for sleep. You may have experienced this. After forgiving someone, you feel as if a weight has lifted from your chest, not because the other person changed, but because you no longer carry that heavy energy. A wholesome heart does not only comfort others, it allows us to rest. This does not mean that people who live well will never face difficulties. Life still holds challenges, loss, and change. But those who cultivate a kind heart are less tormented by their own thoughts. They lie down with a sense of ease, and that is a form of wealth no money can buy. In contrast, when the mind is filled with resentment or guilt, we may possess every comfort and still not sleep well. Because sleep does not come from material things. It comes from inner stability. If tonight you lie down and your mind is not yet at ease, Perhaps there is nothing to fear. Perhaps it is simply a gentle reminder that the mind needs care. Ask yourself, what seeds did I plant today? What did I do that lightened my heart? And what might I lay down so I can rest? Not to blame yourself, but to understand. Because when we understand the law of cause and effect, we no longer live in fear. We live in awareness. We know that each wholesome thought today becomes the peace of tomorrow. And as the mind begins to incline toward goodness, the night gradually grows gentler. Sleep is no longer a battle. It becomes the natural reward of a quiet heart. And when we begin to recognize the power of what we plant within the mind, we open the door to a gentler way of living, where the stories ahead will guide us more deeply in transforming suffering into peace. Stories that illustrate cause and effect, and the power of a kind heart. Have you ever wondered whether one small act of kindness today could change your life in the future? Many people think good deeds are simply moral obligations, but in the quiet current of life, every wholesome action is like a seed. We may forget that we planted it, but the earth and sky do not forget. And one day, that seed sprouts in ways we never expected. I once heard a story about a woman who sold vegetables in a small market. People called her Ba-Tu. Her stall was modest, and her vegetables were not the most beautiful. Yet every day, if a beggar passed by, she would quietly hand them a small bundle of greens. No one asked her to. No one praised her. She simply did it because someone was hungry. One evening, a fire broke out in the market, and the flames spread quickly, destroying nearly every stall. The next morning, people were stunned to see that Batu's stall was among the very few left untouched. Some said it was luck. Some said it was the location. But many in the market simply looked at her in silence, as if they understood that kindness never disappears from this universe. Kindness does not always return immediately, but it is never lost. This brings to mind another story about a scholar. 20 years earlier, he had helped a stranger injured on the road. After recovering, the man left, and life went on. They never met again. Many years later, the scholar was falsely accused in a serious legal dispute. All evidence seemed to stand against him, until a young lawyer appeared and persistently defended him in court. Thanks to that defense, he was cleared of all charges. After the trial, the scholar discovered the lawyer was the son of the man he had once saved. We often believe the good we do is forgotten, but life has its own way of remembering. A good seed does not disappear. It simply waits for the right moment to return. Not as a miracle, but as conditions coming together. Another story tells of a merchant traveling along road. One day, he saw an injured horse by the roadside. Instead of passing by, he stopped, treated its wounds, and released it back into the wild. Years later, while crossing a dangerous mountain pass, his horse suddenly stopped and refused to move forward. He dismounted to investigate and discovered a collapsed cliff ahead, hidden by thick fog. Because he stopped in time, he avoided a fatal accident. The guide quietly said, "Sometimes the compassion we offer returns to protect us." Perhaps it was coincidence, but perhaps when we live with compassion, we move through the world with a different energy, one that helps us avoid unseen dangers. Compassion does not only change others, it changes how life responds to us. A simpler story comes from a rural village. A farmer was famous for the high quality of his corn. Each year, he won prizes at the local agricultural fair. When asked for his secret, he surprised everyone. He shared his best corn seeds with neighboring farmers. People asked, "Why help those who compete with you?" He smiled and said, "The wind carries pollen from field to field. If my neighbors grow poor crops, my field is affected. When they grow good corn, the whole region improves." Giving did not make him poorer. It improved the environment around him, and he benefited from it. Life works in much the same way. What we offer to the world does not stop with the receiver. It spreads, circulates, and one day returns to us in another form. When we help someone, we do not change only one moment. We contribute to creating a more compassionate environment in which we ourselves live. You may not see the results immediately, but that does not mean nothing is happening. Every kind thought, in every generous act, every compassionate choice is quietly transforming your life. And something remarkable happens. When we live with a kind heart, we sleep better, not because life no longer holds difficulties, but because we are no longer fighting our own conscience. We lie down with relief, we close our eyes with ease, we enter sleep without carrying burdens. The world may still be uncertain, yet inside, a quiet peace begins to form. And when we recognize the power of kindness and cause and effect, we begin to understand that each small choice today shapes the peace of tomorrow. Perhaps from this moment, the question is no longer, what will life give me? But what am I planting into life today? And when that question settles in the heart, we are ready to move into deeper layers of transformation, where forgiveness and compassion continue opening the door to freedom from suffering. Forgiveness and compassion free us from suffering. Perhaps that person is not a stranger. Perhaps it is an old friend, a family member, or even yourself in the past. There is a truth few people speak about. Sometimes the one who keeps us awake at night is not the person who hurt us, but the memory of them still living in our mind. You lie down. The room is quiet. Yet one passing thought, a sentence from years ago, an unfair act, a betrayal, a moment of being misunderstood, and the heart grows heavy again. The body is tired, but the mind is awake. Have you ever felt that? During the day, we stay busy to forget. But at night, when everything settles, emotions that were never healed return. Not to hurt us again, but because they have not been released. Resentment is like gripping a burning stone with the intention of throwing it at someone else, but it is our own hand that burns first. Many people believe holding on to anger makes them stronger, that if they forgive, they will become weak, that if they let go, the other person will win. But the truth is the opposite. When we hold resentment, the one imprisoned is not the other person. It is ourselves. The mind returns to the past again and again. Negative emotions replay repeatedly. That heavy energy follows us into sleep, into dreams, into every breath. And then we wonder why we cannot find peace. A man once shared that he suffered insomnia for many years after being betrayed in business by a close friend. Each time he closed his eyes, he relived the betrayal. He imagined conversations that never happened. He argued in his mind with the person who had hurt him. That person had long left his life, but in his mind, the story continued every night. One day, his doctor told him his health was seriously declining due to prolonged stress. He began attending a meditation course, and for the first time, he heard a sentence that disturbed him. Forgiveness is not because they deserve it. Forgiveness is because you deserve peace. At first, he resisted. He believed it was unfair. But after months of practice, he realized forgiveness does not erase the past. It ends the repeated suffering in the present. The day he decided to release his resentment, he said he slept the deepest sleep he had known in years, not because life became perfect, but because his mind stopped fighting. Forgiveness does not mean accepting wrongdoing. It does not mean returning to toxic relationships. It does not mean forgetting the lesson. Forgiveness means not allowing old pain to continue harming us in the present. It is an act of liberation. When we forgive, we do not set someone else free. We set ourselves free. Buddhism views compassion and forgiveness as expressions of wisdom, because only when we understand the nature of suffering, that people act from ignorance, fear, and their own wounds, can we release blame. The one who hurt us was also hurt. The one who caused pain carries pain within, and the cycle continues until someone chooses to stop. Forgiveness is not weakness. Forgiveness is the strength to end the cycle of suffering. You may not be ready to forgive today. That is okay. Forgiveness is a journey, not a decision made in a single moment. But you can begin with one very small step, acknowledging that you deserve peace, not tomorrow, not when they apologize, not when justice is served, but right now. Tonight, as you lie down, place a hand on your chest and ask, what am I still carrying that makes my heart heavy? Am I continuing to carry a story that ended long ago? You do not need to resolve everything in one night. Just be willing to release a little resentment, a little blame, a little sorrow, and in that small space, a peace begins to enter. When the heart grows lighter, the breath deepens. When the breath deepens, the body relaxes. When the body relaxes, sleep arrives like a gentle friend. Forgiveness does not change the past, but it changes the way you enter the night. And when you sleep with a lighter heart, you awaken to a new life. Perhaps from here, we begin to understand that freedom from suffering does not come from controlling the outer world, but from releasing what binds us within. And when the heart learns to let go, a deeper journey of healing awaits ahead. Suffering as a lesson that awakens understanding. There is a paradox in life that almost everyone experiences. The most painful periods often become the turning points that lead to the deepest growth. No one wishes for suffering. No one wants loss. No one chooses hardship. And yet, when you look back on your life, do you notice that your greatest lessons did not come from peaceful days, but from the days you thought you could not endure? When everything is comfortable, we live by habit. We rarely pause to understand ourselves. But when suffering appears, we are forced to look inward, and that deep looking opens the door to awakening. In Buddhist teaching, suffering is not meaningless. It is seen as a natural part of life and understood in layers so we can see its true nature. Some suffering belongs to the body: illness, aging, or accidents, physical exhaustion. These are natural forms of suffering that every human being must face. No one can avoid them completely. But when we understand that they are part of the body's nature, we become less fearful and less resistant. A person once said after undergoing major surgery, "I still feel pain, but I am no longer afraid of it." When fear disappears, pain no longer occupies the entire mind. Beyond physical suffering, there is suffering born from karma, from actions and choices made in the past. At times, we encounter difficult circumstances without understanding why. Broken relationships, repeated failures, challenges that seem unfair. If we look with blame, we see only injustice. But if we look with awareness, we may ask, what within me is being asked to learn from this experience? Not to blame ourselves, but to understand. Because when we understand, transformation begins. And then there is a deeper form of suffering created by the mind. This pain does not arise from circumstances, but from how we interpret them. Two people may experience the same event, yet their level of suffering is completely different. One sees failure as an ending, another sees it as a lesson. One hears criticism as an insult, another hears it as an opportunity to grow. The event may be the same, but the story we tell in our mind creates an entirely different experience. A woman once lost her job after 15 years of dedication. For months, she sank into despair, feeling life was unfair. Yet that period forced her to re-examine what she truly wanted. She began relearning a skill she had once loved, and a few years later, she built an entirely new career. Later, she said, "If I had not lost my job, I would never have discovered my true self." What once caused her the deepest pain became the doorway to a new life. Adversity does not always destroy us, and sometimes it breaks the old shell so a new self can emerge. Suffering is also where compassion is born. When we have never suffered, we easily judge the pain of others. But after experiencing loss, we begin to understand and empathize more deeply. Someone who has overcome depression can listen with genuine understanding. Someone who has known poverty can open their heart to those in need. The experience of suffering softens the heart. Suffering also teaches us to let go. When we try to hold everything according to our wishes, life often teaches us that nothing is permanent. What we cling to eventually changes. And in the process of losing, we learn that true value does not lie in possession, but in acceptance. Do you notice that after each hardship you overcome, you become stronger? Not stronger in hardness, but stronger in depth and calm. We no longer react as violently as before. We understand that everything passes. We trust in our own ability to rise again. This is the maturation of the mind. An understanding suffering does not make us pessimistic. On the contrary, it frees us from fear. When we understand its nature, we no longer see suffering as an enemy. We see it as a teacher. And when we see it as a teacher, we begin to listen. Perhaps right now, you are passing through a difficult period. You may feel exhausted, lost, or wounded. If so, please remember, what you are experiencing is not meaningless. It may be teaching you something about compassion, about letting go, about an inner strength you never knew you had. And when we begin to see suffering with understanding, a strange lightness appears. The pain may not be gone, but the resistance softens. In that quiet space, wisdom begins to grow. And from that deep understanding, we are ready to step into the principles of living that calm the mind, where small choices each day can guide us toward a lighter way of life. Principles for living with a peaceful mind. There is something interesting many people only realize after years of busyness. Most of the things that once caused us stress were never necessary to carry. You may recall the last time you argued to win a dispute. In that moment, you may have proven yourself right. But when everything settled, did your heart truly feel lighter? Or was there still a lingering discomfort, an invisible distance between you and the other person? We grow up in a world that praises winning. Winning at work, winning arguments, winning status. Yet very few teach us that there are victories that cause the heart to lose. When we insist on being right at all costs, we may keep the argument, but lose our peace. Not every disagreement needs a winner. Sometimes silence is maturity, and sometimes understanding matters more than being right. And when we release the need to win, a lightness appears. In a similar way, life becomes heavy when we constantly compare and compete. Someone buys a house, and we feel behind. Someone succeeds, and we feel inadequate. Someone is recognized, and we feel lacking. Comparison prevents the mind from ever resting. A man once shared that he reached a high position in his career, yet constantly felt pressure to maintain the image of success. He compared himself with colleagues, friends, and people on social media. He had everything he once dreamed of, yet he never felt it was enough. Only when he stepped away from the race of comparison did he realize what he was seeking was not to be better than others, but to be at peace within himself. Letting go of comparison does not make us less, it sets us free. There is another quieter pressure, the pressure to live according to others' expectations. Family hopes we succeed along a certain path. Society defines success by fixed standards. Friends expect us to remain the version of ourselves they recognize. And sometimes, in trying to please everyone, we lose ourselves. Have you ever paused to ask, what I am pursuing, is it truly what I want, or what I believe others expect of me? Living by others' expectations may bring approval, but it can also bring deep exhaustion. When we allow ourselves to live authentically, even imperfectly, the mind begins to feel lighter. Another habit that unsettles the mind is excessive curiosity about other people's private lives. When we constantly discuss, judge, or compare others' lives, the mind becomes entangled in stories that do not belong to us. We may know much about others' lives, yet understand very little about our own. Stillness begins when we return to caring for our inner life instead of observing the lives of others. Life also grows heavy when we chase endless desire, buying more to feel enough, doing more to feel worthy, owning more to feel secure. But desire is like drinking seawater. The more we drink, the thirstier we become. A woman who spent many years pursuing material success once said, "I had everything I ever wanted, yet I never felt enough until I learned to be grateful for what I already had." Contentment does not make life smaller, it makes the heart more spacious. Many people also live trapped in the past. They replay old mistakes, lost opportunities, things that should have been different. The past becomes an anchor that holds them back, making it hard to move forward. But the past can teach us. It cannot live for us. When we loosen our grip on what is past, the present begins to open. And then there is a very common fear. The fear of making mistakes. Afraid of failure, we do not try. Afraid of judgment, we do not step forward. Afraid of imperfection, we do not begin. But no one grows without making mistakes. Mistakes are not the end. They are part of the learning journey. When we stop fearing mistakes, we begin to live more freely. We allow ourselves to learn, adjust, and move forward without self-blame. All these things, the need to be right, comparison, expectations, curiosity about others' lives, endless desire, attachment to the past, fear of mistakes, are like small stones we unconsciously place into the backpack of the mind each day. One stone is not heavy, but many stones exhaust us. When we begin to set some of them down, we do not lose anything truly important. We simply release what we never needed to carry. And when the backpack grows lighter, our steps become easier. At night, we lie down no longer carrying so many invisible burdens. The breath deepens, the body relaxes. Sleep comes more naturally, not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because we have learned to live lightly. Letting go is not abandoning life. Letting go is living with awareness. And as the mind becomes lighter in this way, we are ready to enter deeper practices before rest, where each breath and each moment of stillness can guide us into peaceful sleep. Practices before sleep for a peaceful night. If you want tonight's sleep to be deeper, perhaps what matters is not the pillow beneath your head, but the way you close your day. Many people climb into bed as if jumping off a train still running at full speed. Unfinished work, unanswered messages, thoughts without closure. The body has lain down, but the mind is still racing. And we wonder why sleep does not come. Sleep is not merely a biological state. It is a transition from movement into stillness. If we do not create that stillness, the mind will continue carrying the momentum of the entire day. So the way we end a day can determine the quality of our sleep. Imagine each night as a gentle ritual, a way to close what is past and return to the quiet within. The first step is simple. Review the day you have lived, not to judge, not to blame yourself, only to recognize, how did today unfold? Was there a moment that made you smile? Was there something that caused tension? Where were you rushed, and where were you fully present? Just by looking back with gentle awareness, the mind begins to slow. The events of the day are no longer a chaotic stream. They become completed experiences. If during the day you did something unskillful, spoke in anger, acted impatiently, or unintentionally hurt someone, allow yourself to acknowledge it in silence, not to punish yourself, but to learn. A quiet moment of repentance in the heart is like wiping a small speck of dust from a mirror. When we admit our mistakes, the mind no longer needs to hide or defend. It becomes lighter. Then remember the good you have done, even the smallest things. Perhaps you smiled at someone. Perhaps you were patient in a difficult moment. Perhaps you completed an important task, or simply you did your best. We often remember mistakes more easily than goodness. But when we recognize the good seeds we have planted, we nurture confidence and gratitude. The mind no longer feels lacking. It begins to feel enough. The next step carries deep healing power: forgiveness. During the day, someone may have said something that upset you. You may have felt misunderstood, overlooked, or hurt. If you carry those feelings into sleep, they will continue living in the mind all night. Forgiveness does not mean denying your feelings. It means not allowing those feelings to continue harming you. You may gently say within, "I release this. I choose peace." Not because the other person deserves it, but because your heart deserves rest. Once the mind feels lighter, spend a few minutes returning to the breath or repeating a familiar meditation phrase. When you focus on the breath, the heart rate slows, and the nervous system softens, and the body receives a signal of safety. Breathing in. Aware that you are breathing in. Breathing out. Aware that you are breathing out. Each breath is like a gentle wave, carrying you away from the noise of thought and back into the still waters within. If you are accustomed to chanting the Buddha's name or a meditation phrase, repeat it slowly in your mind. The sound is not a plea. It is an anchor to stillness. Then comes the final step: letting go. Let go of unfinished plans. Let go of tomorrow's worries. Let go of unanswered questions. Night is not the time to solve life. Night is the time to rest. You do not need to carry tomorrow into tonight's sleep. You do not need to control everything before closing your eyes. You only need to allow yourself to rest. A woman once shared that she used to go to bed with a mental list of tasks for the next day, running endlessly through her mind. After she began writing those tasks on paper before sleeping and telling herself, "I will return to this tomorrow," she noticed her mind felt lighter. When the mind stops trying to hold everything, sleep comes more naturally. Sleeping in mindfulness is not a distant concept. It is when the body rests and the mind no longer resists the present. It is entering sleep with a sense of completion, without carrying unfinished stories. The body lies down. The breath softens. The mind becomes still like a night lake. And in that stillness, sleep arrives like a gentle friend, not rushing, not forcing, simply embracing you softly. Perhaps tonight you may close your day with a few minutes of such mindfulness. It does not need to be perfect, only sincere. Because when we learn to end a day with awareness, we do not only sleep more deeply, we awaken with a renewed spirit. And from that stillness, as the deepest message of this journey begins to reveal itself, peace is not something we find at the end of the road. It is something we cultivate in each moment we pause. Slowing down to hear the voice of the heart. Have you ever felt that you moved through an entire day, yet cannot remember a single moment you truly lived? The morning begins in haste. Messages, work, responsibilities, schedules. The mind runs ahead of the body. And before you realize it, the day is gone. At night you lie down exhausted, not only from doing too much, but because the mind has never rested. We are living in a world that moves very fast. Everything urges us to accelerate, do more, respond faster, achieve sooner. Yet few people ask, where is this speed taking us? Many spend their lives running, only to realize one day they left themselves behind. Amid such hurried living, our connection with the inner self grows faint. We know tomorrow's meeting schedule, global news, other people's lives on social media, yet we do not know how we ourselves feel. Are you tired? Are you sad? Do you need rest? Sometimes we have no answers because we have never paused long enough to listen. Yet the peace we seek is not waiting at the end of the journey. It is not a reward for those who run the fastest. It is always there, in each breath, waiting for us to return. A man working in finance once shared that he had lived for years in a state of constant busyness. His schedule was packed. His phone never left his hand. Even while eating dinner with his family, his mind remained at work. One day, his young daughter asked him, "Dad, why are you always in a hurry?" That simple question stopped him. He realized he had been living as if he were always late for somewhere, yet he did not know where he was going. He began to change with one small step. Each day, he sat quietly for a few minutes. No phone, no work, just breathing and listening to his body. At first, the silence made him uncomfortable. His mind wanted to return to its familiar busyness. But after a few weeks, he began to feel something he had never noticed before. Lightness. He said, "I didn't slow down to do less. I slowed down to live more." Slowing down does not mean falling behind. It means being present. When we eat and truly taste the food, that is living. When we walk and feel our feet touch the ground, that is living. When we listen to a loved one without rushing to respond, that is living. Living slowly is not doing everything sluggishly. It is doing everything with awareness. When we pause and breathe slowly, the nervous system begins to settle. The heart rhythm steadies. The body receives a signal of safety. And in that quiet space, we begin to hear what noise once concealed, the voice within. Perhaps it is an unnamed sadness, perhaps a forgotten dream, perhaps a fatigue we have never acknowledged. And the listening inward is not to fix immediately. It is to understand. And when we understand, healing begins. A curious paradox appears. When we constantly chase the world, we feel lacking. But when we return inward, we begin to feel enough. You might try a small moment right now. Take a deep breath, slow down, and feel the air entering your body. No need to change anything. Simply recognize that you are alive. In that moment, there is no past, no future, only presence. And in that presence, peace does not need to be sought. It appears on its own. When the mind no longer runs with the world's urgency, night becomes gentler. We no longer carry the day's frantic rhythm into sleep. The breath deepens. The body relaxes. The mind settles like a lake when the wind stops blowing. Sleep is no longer a collapse from exhaustion. It becomes natural rest. Life outside may still move quickly, but within, you have discovered a different rhythm. Slower, deeper, more real. And when we learn to slow down and listen to the voice of the heart, we begin to live not merely to complete the day, but to truly inhabit each moment of our lives. From that presence, a deep peace gradually spreads, preparing us to enter the final part, where everything we have heard is not only to be understood, but to become a way of living. And perhaps, for the first time in a long while, you are no longer running. You do not need to go anywhere. You have come home. Gratitude for small things nurtures peaceful sleep. Have you noticed that the days we feel most at peace are usually not the days of great achievement? Not the day of a promotion? Not the day of earning more money? Not the day everything is perfect? It may simply be an ordinary day. When you eat a warm meal, hear familiar laughter, or step outside and see that the sky is still blue. Yet in the rush of life, we easily believe happiness lies in something greater ahead. We think, when I reach this goal, I will feel at ease. When I have that, I will feel secure. And while waiting for those big moments, we overlook the small things that nourish the soul each day. A complete day is not measured by the greatest success, but by the moments we truly live. A deep breath at the start of the morning, sunlight touching the window, a smile offered without reason, a simple but warm meal. These things are small enough to be overlooked, yet they are the foundation of peace. An elderly woman once shared that after recovering from a serious illness, she began writing down 3 things she felt grateful for each night. At first, she believed there was nothing special to record, but gradually she noticed simple things. Today she could walk into her garden. Today her neighbor smiled at her. Today she listened to the rain and felt comforted. A few months later she said, My life did not change, but the way I see my life changed. When gratitude appears, the mind naturally softens. Worries do not disappear completely, but they no longer occupy the entire space of the mind. Like morning mist dissolving when the sun rises, tension quietly withdraws when gratitude is present. Gratitude does not deny difficulty. It recognizes that alongside difficulty, there is still much to cherish. You may have had a tiring day, yet you are still breathing. You still have the chance to begin again tomorrow. You still have small moments that nourish your spirit. And when we begin to notice these things, life is no longer merely a list of tasks to complete. It becomes an experience worth living. A curious paradox appears. When we focus on what is missing, the mind remains restless. But when we recognize what is present, the mind begins to feel enough. Abundance does not come from having everything. It comes from recognizing how much we already have. Before sleep, if we carry what we have not achieved and the worries of tomorrow, the mind remains tense. But if we close the day with gratitude, the mind enters the night with gentleness. You may try something very small tonight. Before closing your eyes, recall 3 things you are grateful for today. They need not be grand, only sincere. Perhaps a warm cup of tea, a quiet moment, someone who listened to you, or simply, you made it through the day. And as you think of these things, the body begins to relax. The breath deepens. The heartbeat slows. The mind releases its tight grip on worry. Gratitude is like a whisper to life. I recognize what is present, and life responds with peace. A person who lives with gratitude is not peaceful because life is perfect. They are peaceful because they do not postpone happiness until everything is perfect. They sleep with a light heart. They wake with appreciation. They step into a new day with openness. Sleep arrives not as an escape, but as a gentle embrace of the night. Tonight, you may not need to change your life. You may only need to change your perspective for a few minutes before sleep. And in that moment of gratitude, the mind becomes soft, light, and peaceful. From that peace, we begin to understand that happiness is not something to search for in distant places, but something waiting to be recognized in the small things before us. If you feel a little lighter right now, stay with that feeling. There is nothing more you need to do. Simply remain in this peace. Core message. Perhaps by now, as the sounds of the long day have faded, you begin to sense a very different kind of stillness. Not the silence outside, but the softening within. We have walked together through many stories, sleepless nights, restless thoughts, the heaviness we carry without even realizing it. And somewhere along this journey, you may have seen your own reflection, not in perfect moments, but in deeply human moments. Fatigue, worry, hurt, and the longing for peace. If there is one simple yet profound truth this journey wishes to remind us, it is this: peace does not begin in the outside world. It begins within the mind. We often wait for circumstances to change before we feel at ease. A more stable job, better relationships, smoother conditions. But the truth is, even when life around us is not perfect, a quiet mind can still find calm. Because peace is not a place. It is a state of consciousness. When we choose to live with kindness, even through the smallest actions, something remarkable happens. The heart grows lighter. A gentle word, a helpful act, a wholesome thought. Each one plants seeds of peace in the mind. And when night arrives, we lie down with ease. Sleep comes not because we are exhausted, but because we are at peace. When we release resentment, we do not change the past, but we change how we step into the present. The heart is no longer bound by old stories. The mind no longer repeats old pain. And unexpectedly, when the heart grows lighter, life feels lighter too. Not because problems disappear, but because we no longer carry them as burdens. Understanding cause and effect helps us live more consciously. We recognize that every thought, word, and action plants seeds for the future. With this understanding, we no longer live unconsciously. We live by choice. We choose kindness. We choose compassion. We choose peace. And each small choice quietly transforms our lives. Suffering, when seen through the eyes of understanding, is no longer an enemy. It becomes a teacher. Hardships that once brought us to our knees become the place where we learn compassion, letting go, and inner strength. We do not grow despite hardship. We grow through it. And when we learn to forgive, the heart begins to open. Forgiveness is not because others deserve it. Forgiveness is because we deserve peace. In that compassion, the cycle of suffering ends. A deep freedom begins. Then, when we close the day with mindfulness, with the breath, with letting go, with gratitude, sleep is no longer a battle. It becomes a return. The body rests, the mind restores, and from that deep rest, we awaken with renewed energy. Some call this luck, but in truth, it is the natural result of a peaceful heart. Tomorrow may still hold challenges, yet within something has changed. You no longer face life with the same tension, but with a deeper calm. And perhaps the most important thing is not how many storms life brings, but that you have learned how to anchor your heart in peace. If right now you feel a little lighter, a little slower, a little calmer, stay with that feeling for a few moments more. Let tonight become a gentle beginning. And if along this journey you thought of someone who carries constant worry, someone who struggles to sleep because of racing thoughts, or someone bearing burdens they have not yet laid down, have you ever seen a loved one like that? If a face has just appeared in your mind, perhaps they too need a moment of peace like this. Send this video to them as a gentle reminder that peace is not far away. It is always there, waiting for us to return.